Hello and welcome back to this course. In this video, we are going to be talking about data types. In our previous video, we were able to treat variables in Python. So what is data type? Data type is a classification or categorization that tells the Python interpreter the kind of value a variable holds, whether it is a number or a text or a list or a boolean data. So like we already demonstrated in our previous video, where we demonstrated whether we wanted a variable to be regarded as an integer, a string, a complex, a float, and the rest of them. So we are just going to continue from that script and explain more what data types are. So we already saw a little demonstration of data types, but in this video we are going to go in depth into data types. So what does data types matter in Python? Well, the reason is that when you're writing a number, there are certain operations that you can perform on a number that you cannot perform on a text. So data types tells your interpreter that you can perform these operations on this particular data or on this particular variable, or that you can store this particular variable in this format. So what are we going to be looking at in this video? Well, we already explained what data types are. We are going to be looking at text data type, which are called string. We are going to also look at the numerical data types, and they include the integer, the float, and the complex data type. We're also going to look at the Boolean data types. So come with me to our Visual Studio Code as we demonstrate Python data types. So back here in our VS Code, we still have our variables that we declared in our former video. So I'm going to call the type method on some of these variables, and this will help us to classify these variables. So I'm going to write a comment here, Python data types, demonstration. So I'm going to pick some of these variables, and I'm going to call the type method on some of them. So I'm going to write print and open my parentheses, and then write type and another parenthesis inside the print statement, and I'm going to pass in my variable name. So I'm going to start with name. Remember we declared this name variable in our former video. So I'm going to duplicate this text so that we can change the variable names inside. So we have name, then for the other one we have age, then there's another age variable there with capital letter, and we have fact, and for this fruit variable, I'm going to set it back to just one variable of, well, maybe fruit, and I'm going to get rid of this other fruit 1 and fruit 3. So I'll remove this print statement entirely. Now for this last one, I'm going to simply type in fruit. So what are we doing here? Well, this type method here is simply a method, that is a function that is checking the type of data that each of these variable is. So assuming you don't have access to this script, you did not see how the value was declared, you can simply call this type function on these variables, and when you run it, so let's save it and run. Well, now the output says that the first one is of class string, the second one, age with small letter, is of class complex, the third one is of class string, that is this age. Remember that we used typecasting on this particular one and converted the value 30 to a string, and the other one is a boolean, and the last one is a list. So I'm going to clear this output, and what I can do is to come back to this part of the code in our former video and inspect this int method here. So now if you look at this, Python says that this int is a class. Okay, so this int is a class, which means it is a classification of data type. So I'll do the same thing for probably float, and you see again you have the keyword class just beside this float where the float was defined. So coming back to our code, what is happening here is that Python has been built to classify every data that you pass into your program, so that it will know the particular operations that can be performed on that particular data that you're passing in. So another name to check the type of your variable is to use the isInstance method on the variable. So we are going to explain that better when we get to object-oriented programming. That is how to declare your own class in Python. Okay, so but what I'm going to do now is simply to write another print statement. That is why we always use this print statement, is because for now we are not performing any other operation on any of this variable other than to show them on the screen, to show what they are. Okay, but for now what we are doing is to try to check whether these data types are the data types that we expect them to be. Okay, so one way to check it is to use this type method on them. Then another one is to use the isInstance method. So in this print statement, I am going to simply pass in isInstance. Okay, it is a built-in function. So we write this isInstance, open and close our parentheses, pass in the variable that we want to check whether it is an instance of, or it is the type of value that we expect it to be. So we pass in age and write our comma, and then pass in complex. All right, so right now we are trying to check whether this age with small letter is a complex number. Okay, so and we print, and the output simply says true, that our age is a complex number. So if I change the variable to fruit and I check whether fruit is a complex number, so let's save and run again. And again it says false, fruit is not a complex number. Okay, so let's check whether fruit is a list, and run, and it says true, that fruit is a list. Okay, that is how to check the data types of your variables. So for instance, you do not know the data types of the variables that were passed to your application. This is how to check them. Okay, now how are string data types declared? So let's say I want to write a variable that will hold the name of my students. So I am going to just call it, so that's going to be the name of the variable, and I'll assign it to, well, some text, which is going to be somebody's name. If I just write Mirabel, well, like we already saw in our previous videos, this will not work because Python will not recognize what this Mirabel means. So right now we are seeing a yellow line under this, and it's just telling us that Mirabel is not defined. So Python is like, what is this? Is this a piece of text? You are not writing this properly in a way that I understand. So is this a function? Is this just a piece of text or what? So if I use my double quotes on it, then the error just gets cleared out. Now, this is a string variable. So any piece of text that you enclose in your quotes becomes a string, becomes to Python just a piece of text. Okay, so now you can use these double quotes to declare your string variable, but then that is not the only way to declare your string variable. You can also use single quotes. So I'm going to pass in single here, and you can also use triple quotes. So we also practice the use of these triple quotes when we are writing comments, but in the actual sense of it, these triple quotes, they are primarily used to write a multi-line string. So that is what these triple quotes are primarily for. Now I'm going to pass in a test here, and I'm going to call it triple. Okay, and then I will save this, and I'll print, well, I'll print student's name, and I'll print for the first member. So I'm going to print 0. So Python starts counting objects from index 0. So it starts counting the members of this list now from 0, 1, then 2. So I'm going to copy this line of code, I'm going to duplicate it by copying and pasting. So this one, I'm going to write passing 1, that is the first member, and then 2, the last member. Then I will save this file and run it. If I check the type of all of this, let me clear our output. I'm also going to comment out our former print statements. So right now, I'm going to run this script. So here you have that the 3 of them are of class string. So even though I define them differently, the first item with double quotes, the second item with single quotes, and the third item with triple quotes, still all of them are printed as string variables. So now, what is the use of these triple quotes? So let's say I want to write a student details and it is going to take me more than one line. Okay, so assuming I write it in double quotes, and I write the student's name is student, and I hit enter. Now as you can see, on hitting enter, Python automatically gives me another set of double quotes. Okay, so I cannot continue this line in another line. So, and let me try also doing that with single quotes instead of double quotes. So I'm going to hit enter again, and again the same thing happens. So but if I'm to use triple quotes, and I hit enter, but Python understands that I am continuing that string on another line. So I'll use my spacebar to move the cursor in. So, and he is 18 years old. So right now, I am going to enclose this inside a print statement. So I'm going to paste it inside this print statement. And for this line, I'm going to move it downwards so that everything will be properly aligned. And I'm going to clear my output terminal. And I'm going to save and run. So here now, Python now prints this text exactly the way I wrote it. So that is one of the things that these triple quotes can do for us. Okay. So if you want your text to be printed on more than one line, enclose them in triple quotes. Now let's look at other data types. So we have the numerical data types. And for the numericals, we have the int, we have the float, and we have the complex. So for numerical data types, we are going to demonstrate numerical data types by creating 3 variables, value 1, and set it to 20, value 2, and set it to 20.5, and value 3, we are going to set to 20 plus 5j. So we are going to print the type of passing our value 1, and we are going to duplicate this print statement and change the values to 2 and then the last one to 3. So we're going to save and run, and now we have the classes of integer, float, and complex. Now let's also look at the Boolean data type. So what is a Boolean data type? Well, a Boolean data type, the data type that simply says that this information is true or false. So when you are giving Python a data and the value is only true or false, that particular data type is called Boolean. So a data or a object may have some sort of attributes. So you may just, like we have been trying to do now, trying to check the type of this data. And when we are using the instance method, it simply returns true or false. So that true and false that it returns is also a data type. So you want to check whether this particular information is true of this data is also a data type. Okay. So a Boolean value simply returns either true or false to the screen, okay, or to your program. And then you will now move on to say that if the future is true of that particular value that you are passing, then either print or perform this particular operation on the data. Okay, so that is how to use a boolean data type. So, well, the boolean data type has two constant value, which is true or false. So for a boolean, it is either true or false. It cannot be neutral. It cannot be anything other than true or false. Okay, so right now, we can create a boolean variable like we did in our former script, and we can just say check bool and assign it to true. So when you're assigning a boolean data to true or false, the first letter of each of them, true or false, must be capitalized. So if I want to assign it to false, this is also a valid assignment. So for instance, I write small letter. Well, Python rejects it. It says that I do not understand. So the boolean data is written as starting with capital letter and then the rest of the text in small letter. So you cannot do all small letter or all capital letter. So for instance, I write false. This doesn't work. Okay, so that is how to declare a boolean data. So we can also do the checking for this check bool, and we print the type of check bool, and we can also check whether is an instance of boolean class. So we can just print is instance with our parentheses. So we pass in the variable that we want to check, and then the instance or the class that we are expecting it should be. So, and save. Let's run, and the last print statement says true. Okay, so let's clear our output. So for now, that will be all for Python data types. In our subsequent videos, we are going to look at the operations that can be performed on each of these data types. So thank you so much for joining in this tutorial. See you in the next video.